And before we end this module, I would like to introduce this concept on food sovereignty, and it's going to tie in together with everything that we have learned over the past couple of weeks. So, food sovereignty asserts the rights of individuals and communities to access healthy, culturally appropriate food while promoting ecologically sustainable agricultural practices. And it's led by the global peasant movement, La Via Campesina, the Declaration of Nyeleni in 2007, which outlines the principles of food sovereignty. And La Via Campesina advocates for a fair and just food system, focusing on issues like women's rights in agriculture, opposing land grabs, and resisting GMOs. By prioritizing local knowledge, biodiversity, and sustainable farming practices, this movement seeks to empower communities to control their food production and consumption, challenging the dominance of industrialized agriculture and promoting a more equitable and resilient food systems. And we've talked about the food security in our previous lectures. And food security, just to kind of recap, entails ensuring adequate food production at national and global levels, guaranteeing economic and physical access to food for all individuals, promoting effective food utilization, and maintaining consistent access to food over time. Food justice is a somewhat recent movement, and it's a social movement that's aimed to addressing inequality and injustices that exist within the food system. It advocates for fair treatment of all individuals involved in food production, distribution, and consumption, regardless of factors such as social-economic status, race, or location. And some of the key aspects of this is to ensure that everyone has equal access to nutritious and culturally appropriate food options. We can also look into social justice issues, where we're looking into tackling issues such as labor rights, fair wages, and improved working conditions in the food industry. Also, we can look in terms of environmental justice, in terms of considering the environmental impact of food production and distribution, particularly on marginalized communities. And this concept on food sovereignty is looking at promoting sustainable and culturally relevant practices in food production and consumption, ensuring and empowering communities to make decisions about their food system based on their specific needs and values. So giving them back that local control. Also, in terms of sustainable practices, it looks into encouraging environmental sustainable farming methods that support long-term food security. And it also kind of advocates for inclusive and participatory decision-making in food-related policies to ensure representation and accountability. So here are the 7 pillars of food sovereignty. And it actually really just focuses on a lot of this food for people notion, where it prioritizes people's nutritional needs and well-being in policy formulation and acknowledges that food is essential for human life and should not be treated solely as a commodity. Also, it works together with nature, where it embraces sustainable practices that work in harmony with nature and maximizes the benefits of ecosystems and enhances resilience to environmental challenges. It's also a lot about localization because you're promoting local food systems to shorten the distance between producers and consumers. And it opposes the practices of dumping excess food or providing inappropriate food aid. And this is just what we talked about earlier in the module. Also, it is all about community empowerment because it empowers local food providers by giving them control over their production and distribution processes. And it rejects dependency on distant and unaccountable corporate entities. Also, in terms of cultural preservation, because it values traditional knowledge and it integrates it into modern agricultural practices. It ensures that research supports and passes down this knowledge to future generation. It also looks into respecting food providers because it's looking into supporting sustainable livelihoods for all food providers, including farmers, fishermen, and also indigenous communities. It also recognizes and respects the dignity of labor in the food sector. And the last principle is food is sacred. And it acknowledges that food is a sacred gift of life and it should not be wasted or commodified. And it asserts the intrinsic value of food beyond its economic significance. And here's another concept, which is just building on food sovereignty, and it's called indigenous food sovereignty. It's recognizing social, cultural, and economic relationships that underlie community food sharing, and it involves the understanding the connections between individuals, communities, and the resources that they depend on for sustenance. And the recognition extends beyond mere transactions of food and encompasses deeper ties rooted in history, tradition, and mutual support. So I have a question over there, and how does food sovereignty impact Indigenous people? And I want you to think about this, and the answers are at the bottom of the slides. But by nurturing these connections, communities can sustain their cultural identity, promote social cohesion, and ensure the equitable distribution of resources for generation to come. While it does have current challenges, particularly if you look at how indigenous populations are suffering from habitat degradation, legal battles about land rights. And these days, the term gastro-diplomacy is becoming really, really very popular. It is used as a diplomatic tool to promote cultural exchange and positive international relations. Through food festivals and culinary events, countries showcase their cuisine to foster understanding and goodwill globally. Cultural identity is central to both gastrodiplomacy and food sovereignty, with food serving as an expression of a nation's heritage. While food sovereignty empowers communities to control their food production and preserve culinary traditions, it contrasts with government-led gastrodiplomacy initiatives. But both advocate sustainable food practices, promoting local ingredients and resisting industrialized agriculture for ecological sustainability. Community empowerment is key in both approaches, with gastro diplomacy involving local chefs and community in showcasing culinary heritage, while food sovereignty promotes inclusive decision-making in food governance. So it's basically kind of winning the hearts and minds of people through stomachs, and it's non-threatening. So in the introduction of foreign culture through cuisine, and also kind of helping to enhance their cultural understanding and promoting cultural visibility. And this actually, Thailand is a really very, very good example of gastro diplomacy, and they have invested a lot in this and sent a lot of Thai chefs over here in the US to start introducing Thai cuisine because it not only promotes their culture, but also it in terms of monetary benefits, when people have started to being aware of Thai culture, Thai food, they'll be more keen to actually travel to Thailand, for example. So in a way, it helps to provide a cultural pride and also preserve food ways and techniques. And particularly when we're talking about indigenous population, there is a lack of representation of venues kind of serving native or ethnic cuisine, both for the Native Americans and also with the indigenous population I work with back in Malaysia with the Orang Asli. And from what I've been reading, both in Malaysia and also here in America, there are more native chefs that are coming up to either host pop-up restaurants or have started their own small restaurant to just kind of showcase their food. And it does encourage and inspire communities, and it also helps to increase access to healthy food by promoting and kind of re-educating the indigenous populations about their heritage food. So by recognizing their shared goals of cultural preservation, local autonomy, and sustainability, nations can enhance diplomatic outreach while promoting food security and cultural diversity globally. Over the past couple of weeks, just kind of reflecting back on everything that we've learned, we've looked at how the expansion of agriculture has had far-reaching consequences on environmental change, for example, soil degradation, deforestation, water resource depletion, while also contributing to habitat loss and biodiversity decline. Also, we've seen how the industrialized agriculture, particularly where we talk about the green revolution, the introduction of GMO, had both positive and negative effects on people, social economic status, as well as also the environmental impacts. Also, we've looked into how growing global population is going to place an increasing pressure on agricultural systems to produce more food, and how is that going to impact how is that going to impact the environment? And we've also seen how the current food production um, systems, particularly in terms of producing, and there's an overabundance of cheap processed food. How has that led to the triple burden of malnutrition, where we have overnutrition, hidden hunger, as well as how we are producing enough food, but it's not being distributed to the poor, and we also see parts of the world suffering from undernutrition. So how are we going to transform our food systems? And our efforts towards transforming the food system must adopt an intersectional approach. Recognizing that addressing issues like cheap labor and cheap food are interconnected struggles is essential. We also need to reimagine our energy economy without exploiting nature as an infinite resource. This reimagining involves acknowledging historical injustices such as colonialism and genocide, and demanding reparations for the ecological debt owed to global South countries. And we have inspirations to follow and examples to follow. And for example, this picture over here, it's the coastal Salish totem that is found it's a part of the First Nation tradition, particularly the coastal Salish communities along the border between Canada and the US in the Pacific Northwest. And in coastal Salish communities, there are ways of engaging with food and nature that are very different from the way we understand it. Where, for example, rather than treating food as a resource, there's a thing called Salmon Festival that celebrates the treaty between the coastal Salish people and the salmons. And so when the first salmon swims up the stream, it is caught and celebrated for 10 days. And for 10 days, the entire village recognizes the treaty. And it's only after 10 days that the fish can be pulled from the river. And that means for 10 days, they can make it up and spawn and make sure that there's another generation of fish. And when they are eaten, they are not taken as commodities, not as resources, but as lives that have been taken as part of the treaty and are taken with reverence. And that's very different way for us to engage with the web of life around us than to understand one another as resources or to understand our food as a commodity. And that points a sort of seismic shift in the way that we understand ourselves and the world around us and the web of life. But this is the kind of seismic shift we need as we move towards catastrophic climate change and epidemic diseases. And remember that throughout this course, the challenges we've examined are not isolated in any one region or community. They are global in nature. And as you move forward in your academic journey, consider how you can contribute to solutions that transcends borders and cultures. Your perspectives and insights matter in larger conversation about the future of our world. I also want to emphasize here the importance of empathy in understanding the diverse challenges faced by populations around the globe. In our interconnected world, being aware of and compassionate towards different cultures and their unique struggles is essential. And so let this course be a stepping stone towards fostering a sense of global citizenship and solidarity. And just by looking at this coastal Salish totem and kind of looking into what we can reimagine our food system to be like, there are models for us to follow and ideas for us to dream together. But that's the whole point, isn't it? We cannot do it alone. We have to do it together. And I also want to encourage you to stay informed and engaged. The issues we've covered are dynamic and ever evolving. So keep exploring, questioning, and seeking knowledge. Whether you pursue further studies in the field or apply your insights in other disciplines, your understanding of these global issues will undoubtedly enrich your perspective. So with that, I would like to end here. And I hope that the discussions that we had throughout the semester have sparked a curiosity that will lead you to continue exploring these topics in your academic and personal pursuits. So thank you for your participation and dedication in this course. I would like to wish all of you the best in your future endeavors, and may your insights contribute to positive change in our world.